Welcome back. All right, so as promised, we're going to talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Pittsburgh Penguins, kind of a rocky time for them lately. What stands out is them being 0 for 34 on the power play. That dates back to November the 11th. For the record, that night they went 1 for 3 against the Buffalo Sabres in what was a 4-0 win. But yeah, they're 11-11-3 right now through 25 games, so we got 57 games left for them. The question becomes, can they win enough games to get themselves above the playoff line and stay there? We'll see. They won 2 of their first 3 to start the season. They lost 5 of the next 6, so they ended up 3-6 when all was said and done. And then they won 5 in a row. So it looked like, all right, they figured it out. They've got it. They got it together. Now Pittsburgh's going to run with it. But they start struggling again. Against New Jersey, they lose 5-2. Both goals in that game from Brian Rust. They led 1-0 and 2-1. So scoring first didn't help them in that game. Doesn't help them the night after either. Or the game after, I should say, against Carolina. They lose 4-2. Both goals in that game from Sidney Crosby. They led 1-0 in that game. So having those leads didn't help. It does help against Vegas because their goaltender didn't allow a goal. So they win 3-0 against Vegas. Graves, Achari, Malkin, the 3 goal scorers. Nedeljkovic saves all 38 for the shutout. So pretty solid game for Nedeljkovic and kind of steals the victory there against a Vegas team. Pretty good. Last I checked, they won the Stanley Cup in 2023. Then they host the Rangers. The New York Rangers, one of the hottest, if not the hottest team in the NHL. They lost that game 1-0. Jarry saves 35 out of 36, and Quick saved all 32. Jonathan Quick's been a great story for the New York Rangers. So, again, you look at that one, you could say, well, I mean, yeah, but it's the Rangers, so it's not that bad of a deal, really. Then you get to the Buffalo game. And this is where the struggles really kind of come into focus here. So they had goals from Crosby and Eller, and they led 2-0. They lose the game 3-2. So that's 3 times in 5 games where they score first and they lose the game. So this is a problem. So while the power play gets a lot of attention, and rightfully so, because if you had even, say, 4 goals out of that 34 that they've had none, it's going to change the look of a lot of these games, right? But the losing the 2-0 lead against Buffalo, a team below the playoff line, that's a problem. Then against Toronto, they looked like they were coming out of it. So Gensel, Achari, and Carlson with the goals in that one. They trailed 2-1 after the first period, and they came back and won it. So nice victory for Pittsburgh there, and then it kind of falls off again. An overtime loss against Nashville. Malkin and Rust had the goals in that one. They trailed 2-0. They came back and tied it, and then Forsberg had the overtime winner. So again, you can look at this and say they lost again, or you can say they were down 2-0 and they came back and tied it. So first goals don't seem to matter as much in Pittsburgh games as they do in others, at least on this board. Then against the Tampa Bay Lightning, they won 4-2. It's interesting because they trailed 2-0 after the first. So apparently maybe it's a bad thing if they score first. Goals in that one, Crosby, O'Connor, Carter, and Jarry. Nice to see Jeff Carter get his first goal of the season, just in time for Jarry to keep pace with him and get his first goal of the season. And that was a big story, and rightfully so. Feel-good story, and there hasn't been a feel-good story for Pittsburgh since then. So they get into the back-to-backs against Philadelphia. Philadelphia wins in a shootout 4-3, so that's a shootout loss for Pittsburgh. Yeah, I do get a kick out of how shootout loss comes out to SOL. I think that's mildly funny. But the goals came from Letang, and Gensel had 2. They led 1-0, and they led 2-1 as well. So they had leads in that, didn't hold it. Then they have the overtime loss against Philadelphia in the second half of that back-to-back. The goal in that one was from Crosby. They led 1-0 after the first, and they still lost in overtime 2-1. So this is problematic as well, right? You've now given points to a division rival and a state rival at that. 2 games that you probably could have and maybe should have won. That power play really hurting them at this point, right? Then against Tampa Bay last night, they lose 3-1. Gensel had a goal in that. They trailed 3-0 after 2. They had a 5-on-3 during that game. And we know the story with the Pittsburgh power play. And it does feel like now with that power play, they're really second-guessing themselves. Like there's no confidence on that power play. This is where that slippery slope can go. And what's interesting is their 5-on-5 numbers haven't been bad, and we're going to get to that. So looking at their leading scorers, And I've got their ages up there because I'm sure there will be people who say, well, they need to do a rebuild. Rebuild would be very, very difficult for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So you have Jake Guentzel. He's 29, 25 games, 10 goals, 19 assists, 29 points. Jake Guentzel, excellent natural goal scorer, point per game guy, and absolutely, I think, one of the best players on their roster. You got Sidney Crosby, who's 36, 25 games, 15 goals, 12 assists, 27 points. So he's still producing. He is a couple of years younger than Ovechkin, so when you get into that whole comparison part, keep that in mind. Malkin, 25 games, 10 goals, 11 assists, 21 points. Or is he 1 year younger than Ovechkin, right? Anyways, Malkin, almost a point per game. He's 37. So this is where things get tough because at some point in time, once you're into that mid-30s area, players will start to drop off. I'm not saying Malkin's has dropped off, but again, going back to the Ovechkin category, his performance has changed, his scoring is suddenly gone, and it can happen that quickly. So Malkin's in that territory where at some point soon, whether it's this year, next year, or the year after, that production's going to start to drop off. Brian Rust, 22 games, 10 goals, 10 assists, 20 points. He's 31. So again, players once they're in their 30s, we normally see a bit of a drop-off. The superstars will keep producing, but in their mid-30s, you'll usually see that drop-off there as well. Erik Karlsson in 25 games, 6 goals, 13 assists, 19 points. I believe he's also a plus 11. So that's where it's interesting too. The power play, of course, power play numbers do not affect your plus-minus. And this is part of the reason I think why people see it as a flawed stat. So if a team's not good 5-on-5, but they're very good on the power play, their plus-minus numbers will be rough. If they're really good 5-on-5 and they're not good on the power play, their plus-minus will be very good. So that's part of the reason you can take it with a grain of salt on top of the other reasons there. Then there's Riley Smith, who was added from the Vegas Golden Knights. Looked really good to start the year, dropped off since then. 25 games, 6 goals, 7 assists, 13 points, and he's 32. So Riley Smith, good player, definitely a playoff guy. You got to get to the playoffs, though, to get to that Riley Smith. And so that's where things get a little more difficult. And then Chris Letang. There's been a lot of talk lately about Letang. 25 games, 2 goals, 11 assists, 13 points. His production has dropped off. He's been very decent about the fact that Erik Karlsson kind of replaces him as the top guy. But clearly something's wrong with that power play. And it's something you need to fix immediately if you're the Penguins, right? So, I mean, you don't want to take Karlsson out of a good spot when he's getting you almost a point per game. But when you look at that power play, it might be time to change things up dramatically. And then the goaltending's been quite good. This is the interesting thing with Pittsburgh, too. Their goaltending's been excellent. Jari, 8-9-2 with a .917 save percentage. 3 shutouts for Jari and a goal. Nedeljkovic, 2-2-1 with a .937 save percentage. And the aforementioned shutout of the Vegas Golden Knights. Hellberg called into action, 1-0 in his record, and .922 save percentage. So the goaltending's been quite good for a team that coming into this season, we had questions. You know, can Jari stay healthy? Is Nedeljkovic going to bounce back and have a really big year? Are they going to need to use Hellberg? Well, the answers to all that have been, yeah, things are good. Jari's playing well. Nedeljkovic has been good when he's been in there. And, yeah, Hellberg's been a solid call-up. Now, goals for per game, they're 20th in the league at 2.96, which is something that I think, and again, we can get in, maybe it's a matter of depth scoring. I know there will be those who will point to how all the scoring is concentrated and say, that's Kyle Dubas' team, but it's an issue Pittsburgh's had before he arrived. We were talking about this with Pittsburgh, too, how they could be kind of top-heavy. Remember, last year, towards the end of the season, they were cutting guys and putting players on waivers in order to try to change up that bottom 6. And it feels like we're seeing something similar with them right now, where they're just not getting that production. And again, the power play is going to make that worse, right? Where if the power play was clicking and helping them win some of these games, well, then it's noteworthy that they're not getting production from some of the players they'd like to. But it becomes more and more pronounced when the power play is as bad as it's been. Their goals against per game is 4th in the league at 2.6. So lost in the midst of all this is defensively. Goaltending-wise, they're playing well. Now, power play, 9.9%. That's 30th overall in the NHL. And while the power play has been a discussion with Pittsburgh before, At different times, it's been bad. 9.9% is terrible. The fact that it's 30th surprises me. St. Louis has a 9.5% on the power play. Washington 7.8%. That's going to drag the league average down. I was looking at power plays and seeing that the power plays around the NHL are 1% below what they were last year. Scoring's down slightly. That explains the scoring being down slightly. There are some rough power plays that are holding back the goal scoring of their teams. The penalty kill's been solid, 83.1%. That's 11th. So the penalty kill's been good. Defensively, they're solid. They're right around average with goals scored per game. And 5-on-5, they have 57 goals. That's 4th overall in the NHL with 5-on-5 goals. So again, 5-on-5, they're good. We've heard this about Crosby for how many years now? Oh, Crosby, 5-on-5, he's excellent. But you need more on the power play. 5-on-4, they've scored 6 goals. 6 goals on a 5-on-4 power play, 25 games into the season. They're on pace for what, 20? So that's huge. Washington has 5. They're the only ones with less power play goals. Washington and Pittsburgh are tethered to each other. This is just how this works. And 5-on-3, they've scored once. So that is 7 power play goals through 25 games. It's not enough. It's just not. And you know, usually when a power play is not very good, I can look and I can say, well, I don't know how many games that's costing them. In Pittsburgh's case, it is. Because at this point, if you're playing against Pittsburgh, you're not scared of taking a penalty. Their power play's not very good. So it means that if your team is against Pittsburgh, you're more likely, I would think, to do something that's going to cause you to go to the penalty box if it prevents a goal, because you're not worried about what Pittsburgh's going to do on that power play. Their cap space is currently showing as $1.2 million on Cap Friendly. I do think that Kyle Dubas is going to try to work some kind of a deal, but you know, this is a team that when he added Erik Karlsson, the word was they're going for it. And you have to. You absolutely have to. Crosby, like I said, he's 36. He's not going to play forever. And you want that last hurrah, that last chance at a Stanley Cup. And it feels like both Washington and Pittsburgh are trying to make that happen while age is undefeated. Time is undefeated. It's just at some point in time, these players will be aged out of the NHL. And it's a matter of when does Pittsburgh look at this and say, we need to do some kind of a rebuild or retool. I've heard that Pittsburgh team, you know, the players aren't interested in that. But this is a team that missed the playoffs last season. It's not like this is a team that didn't have its share of faults and flaws coming into this season that we knew about. But the power play, being as bad as it is, has really brought that out. Now, there's the possibility that they turn things around. There's the possibility that things all of a sudden click. They did have that 5-game winning streak. They did win 2 of the first 3 to start the season. They've shown that they can be a very streaky team, and 11-11-3 is not a terrible record, but they do seem to be trending in the wrong direction. And they're giving up points against Tampa Bay and Philadelphia in their recent 4-game stretch. These are teams that they could be battling for that final playoff spot. So Tampa Bay, they do get the win here. They lose here. 2 out of a possible 4 points. Against Philadelphia, they get 2 out of the possible 4 points, but Philadelphia gets all 4. So it's a tough picture being drawn right now by Pittsburgh in terms of being able to get over the hump and get back into the playoffs. But again, we haven't seen 8 top teams emerge in the East and the West where there's a clear divide. So they can. And what we've seen that they're a team that can still win games here and there, even though their power play is completely toothless. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do Pittsburgh need to just basically say, well, this is not a picture that's working? Do you need a change behind the bench? Mike Sullivan's been there for a very long time. But we've seen Minnesota and Edmonton, things turned around as soon as you fire the coach. Even if we as fans look at that and go, I don't think the coach is the problem. If the results change after you fire the coach, you are encouraging other coaches, potentially being shown the door. So does that happen? Does Pittsburgh do something dramatic like that, which absolutely could help to turn some things around? And definitely when you're looking at a power play that's 0 for 34, there's a coach somewhere who might be able to fix that, who may not be employed currently by Pittsburgh. So there's that, right? So maybe it's not a head coaching thing. Maybe it's an associate or an assistant coach. It'll be interesting to see what they do. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below regarding whether or not you view this as being a situation where Pittsburgh's just going through a slump, or you think, nope, this is who they are and they're going to struggle to get some wins. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.